Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. It is new machine day in the shop, but it's not a metalworking machine. Not really. About 3 years ago, I bought a PrimeWeld TIG 225 AC DC TIG machine for the shop, and honestly, I couldn't be happier with it as a TIG machine. TIG really is a fun welding process, and the fact that it can do AC as well as DC is a huge bonus because occasionally I do need to do some welding on some aluminum. For MIG, I have a Hobart Handler 175. It's a transformer machine that I've had for probably 5 years now. I bought it third, maybe fourth hand, and it served me well, but I do have one significant issue with it. For about a year or more, every time I weld with solid wire and argon mixed gas, I get a lot of porosity in my welds. My theory is that there's some corrosion in the gun connector, and that's allowing some room air into the weld, and it's contaminating it and causing it to oxide, which then results in the porosity. So when I heard that PrimeWeld was going to come out with a 285 amp MIG machine, I was really anxious to see what it was going to look like and what it was going to be capable of. So when the MIG 285 from PrimeWeld was finally announced and released, I reached out to Dustin from PrimeWeld and asked him if he would mind sending me one so I could give it a once over. So just to be fully transparent, Dustin did send this machine to me. I did not exchange any money for it. The only ask was that I publish a video and give it my honest opinion. And that's it. Nobody at PrimeWeld has given me any direction, what they want me to say, whether or not they want me to not publish the video if I don't like it, or if they want me to somehow pump it up. And they're not going to get to see this video before all of you do. So let's get this thing the rest of the way out of the box so we can take a look at it. So this video is going to be my personal observations and my first impression opinion of the machine. I had seen some photographs and some renderings of this machine that were shared publicly on Facebook, but this machine is a little bit bigger than I really expected it to be. It is a nice, good-sized, beefy machine, and that's partly due to the fact that you can put 33-pound spools of wire inside of it. Well, physically, it's about 11 inches wide, about 26 inches deep, and about 18 inches tall if you count the handles. And according to the specifications, with it empty, it weighs a little more than 58 pounds, which is actually not bad. My Hobart 175 weighs a bit more than that. One thing I like about this right off is the fact that the door on the side opens down. The Hobart, it opens up, and so you've got to hold it open or flip it all the way open in order to load or take out spools of wire, or to read the chart that's on the inside of the door. So the wire feed mechanism has dual drive rollers, which is nice to have, less likely that you're going to get some wire slip. You can remove the rollers for different size wire or using Flux Core wire. So the spool spindle on the machine will take both a 11 or a 33 pound spool wire. Now it's unnecessary to do what I just did there, and that it was unthread that bolt and remove the spring to take the entire spindle off of the machine. So whatever you do, don't remove this bolt and the spring. Leave it threaded into the machine. There's a nut on the back of that other piece, and if that nut comes dislodged, it could fall down inside the machine, and it might be a little bit more of a chore than you expected to get it back out. The power cord on the back is nice and thick. It is about 6.5 feet long, and this will require at maximum amperage about a 60 amp circuit. The MIG torch that comes with it is a pretty good sized torch. I believe this is sized similar in size as a Tweco 300. Takes the same consumables as that torch, and I believe this connector on the end is referred to as a Miller style. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. And it's got this nice spring on the end of it, which should help with wire feeding through it. If it's got a nice straight route coming out of the machine, it's less likely to bind when it's traveling through the liner. Being that this is an import machine, I was actually surprised to see made in USA stamped on the side of the cable. I don't know if that's the whole torch or if it's just the cable. Now this is a Miller torch off of my Hobart 175, and you can see it's got quite the size difference in just about every aspect. The stinger that comes with it for stick welding is rated for 300 amps. It's a nice size stinger. It is got a lot of plastic on it, which is a little different than the one that's on my Lincoln Tombstone welder, but it does have the standard connectors. Compared to the size of the stinger that comes with the TIG 225, similar feel, similar design, similar quality. Could be a little bit better, but I think it will suit me, that's for sure, but I'm not sure it would survive a rough environment. The work clamp is impressive. It's pretty big. The spring on it is really strong. I actually had a hard time squeezing it to get it open. Now the work clamp that came with the 225 is a little less heavy duty. It suits that machine just fine, but this one with the MIG 285 is certainly stepping up quite a notch. Powering the machine on, you're presented with a little welcome message, PrimeWeld MIG 285, and then it goes into the process screen. You don't hear any fans until you turn it off. The cooling fan will come on whenever you turn the machine off, but it is on demand the rest of the time, which is a very nice feature. You're not having to listen to this loud fan until you actually go to work. We're in MIG mode here, so let's take a look at the controls. The left control adjusts the inches per minute, and it automatically adjusts the voltage as you change the wire feed speed. If I push the knob in and turn it, it adjusts in 10 inches instead of 1. The knob on the right adjusts the voltage delta either up or minus 0 to 15%. If I push the knob on the right, that allows me to adjust the inductance either up 10 or minus 10. I believe this is in percentage, although that's kind of a limited range. Most machines will go from 0 to 100%. Switching over to lift TIG, the left knob adjusts the amperage. And then if I switch to stick mode, again, the left knob adjusts the amperage. I primarily wanted this as a dedicated MIG machine, so let's go back over to the MIG mode and check out the advanced settings. You do that by holding it down for 3 seconds. Here I can choose the process between C25 gas, C100, 100% CO2, or Flux Core wire. I can also set the wire diameter from 025, 030, 035, and 045. If preflow is set to anything other than 0 seconds, when you pull the trigger on the MIG torch, gas will flow out of the nozzle for this duration until the arc is initiated. Similarly, with post flow, when you let go of the trigger, it will continue to flow gas for up to 10 seconds. Run in is not something I have seen before, but it adjusts the wire speed as a percentage of the preset wire speed. Again, I'm not sure exactly what this setting does. In practice, I guess I'll have to experiment at some point. Burn back is an interesting feature, whereas when you let go of the trigger on the MIG torch, the arc is kept going for anywhere between 0 and 1 seconds after the wire feed has stopped and helps prevent the wire from sticking to a weld. Wire sharp is intended to keep you from getting that little ball of melted wire on the end after you've let go of the torch. The spot welding feature is good for you to be able to make repeated spot welds. You can set it from 0 to 20 seconds, and each time you pull the trigger on the torch, it will weld for that duration and then automatically shut off. For stitch welding, I believe the way this works is you set a welding time and a dwell time. So when you pull the trigger on the torch, it'll weld for, say, 2 seconds and then stop for 5 seconds. So it gives you a way of just constantly moving across a seam and stitch welding without having to take your finger off of the trigger. And his last bit, you can change the wire feed speed to be inches or something other than inches. You can also reset everything to the factory defaults, as well as seeing the runtime in hours on the machine. Let's put the machine together and get it ready to do some MIG welding. First thing I want to do is connect the MIG gun. I need to loosen this locking screw and push the torch in through the connector on the front panel, and then just tighten this wing nut down. That holds it in place. Next, we have to take this control lead that attaches between the gun connector and the front panel of the welding machine in order to enable the trigger on the MIG torch. Well, the next thing we need to do is plug this pigtail into the appropriate port on the front to set the polarity of the machine. In one side, you'll be welding DCEN, which would be for gasless flux cord welding, and the other side would be DCEP, or positive, for solid core when you're using a gas shield. Next, I need to make sure that I've got the right size drive rollers inside the wire feeder, these are two-sided. One side will be for one size wire, and then you can flip it around for the other. We're going to put some 030 solid core wire in, so just need to make sure that the groove for 030 is facing to the inside of the machine. Now the machine comes with 3 different sets of drive rollers. One that's an 030 or an 040 V-groove roller for solid wire, and one that's an 025 or 030 V-groove for solid wire. It also has a 035 and 045 knurled roller, and that would be for flux core wire. And to take off and put on these rollers, it's as simple as taking off the thumb screw, pulling the roller off, putting on the new one, and then replacing the thumb screw. They can be a little bit sticky because they are keyed onto a gear there, but if you work it back and forth, it will come off. We're going to load some 030 wire. I'm going to load an 11-pound roll, and for that I need to have this spindle adapter on the roll spindle. Cut the end of the wire here to get a nice smooth section of wire to feed into the wire feeder, and once it's all the way through past both rollers and then into the liner of the MIG torch, I can close the top clamp on the rollers and then adjust the pressure. Well, I've got the torch cable stretched out, and I've removed the contact tip from the end, and then it's just a matter of pulling the trigger on the torch, letting the wire feed all the way through until it comes out the torch end. Now I can slide the contact tip over the wire, tighten it down, and then replace the nozzle. Well, I need to go into the advanced settings by holding this button down and set the process for C25, that's the gas that I'm using, and my wire diameter for 030. We're going to leave all these other settings alone: pre-flow, post-flow, run-in, burn back, wire sharp, the spot and stitch, those are off. We'll leave this in inches per minute, and you can see here there's 0 hours on this machine. Well, before I get to welding, I'm going to take this can of anti-spatter spray from Forney and spray it all over my welding table. This is a Certiflat welding table that I primarily use for TIG welding, and I really don't want to have to deal with grinding off any spatter. So I've never used this spray before, so I figure we'll give it a shot here. Well, my first time pulling the trigger on this machine is going to be to tack this coupon together, and so far I do like how this feels. I will say that I think the trigger on the gun is extremely sensitive. Barely touch it and it seems to want to start feeding wire. Well, nothing left to do but to do it. Well, these are the default settings. I just looked at the chart and set the wire feed speed to what was on the chart. The voltage is automatically selected for me. I think they call that synergic welding. But even though it was automatically set at 17.9 volts, you do have the ability to go up or down 15% in voltage. So I think we'll try that. We'll go up 5% and run another bead. I didn't really notice a lot of difference in the weld. Let's go up to 10% and try it again. Well, that definitely welded a little bit different. I think you might have heard it. It wasn't as crisp as a weld, and the weld profile is not quite what I would want it to be. It's not bad, but I think it's still acceptable. Well, let's go up to 15%, which is the max voltage delta that you can do on the machine. Yeah, I really didn't like that at all. It also seemed, at least behind the hood, seemed to spatter a lot more than the default setting. Let's try the other direction. We'll go down to minus 5% to start. Well, that was actually rather enjoyable, and I think that weld profile looks fantastic. It certainly sounded a lot better. Well, let's keep going. Let's go to minus 10%. Not a terrible weld. It sounded a little bit different. It is building up a little bit too much for me. Let's go ahead and go down to 15%. I predict I'm not going to like this one either. The same thing here. Not a lot of edge fusion, and I would expect that by doing this. Adjusting the voltage has its place. This isn't it. This is just for experiment sake. So we'll go back to 0 and run another bead. Yeah, that's much better. For what it's worth on this piece of 1/8 inch stock, the default settings are just perfect. The machine runs great right out of the box. Well, we got another camera set up here to try and give you an arc shot. So we'll just put the hood back on and run a few more beads. Let me get a little better feel of this machine. Well, I've personally never ran a welder that had an adjustable inductance on it, so let's experiment. I've got the inductance up by 5%. Well, I can't say that I really noticed much of a difference in how it was welding. Um, let's try -5 and see what that does. Well, maybe that was a little bit less spatter than when it was +5. Let's try going down to -10. Well, to be honest, I couldn't tell you if that was really having any significant impact on the weld puddle or its quality. We'll go back to 0 on the inductance, and the default setting seems to weld fairly nicely. Well, I've switched out the wire in the machine with some 035 Flux Core wire, and I've got some 3/8" coupons here. We'll go ahead and give this a shot, tack these together, and we'll try to get you an arc shot. Well, this doesn't look right at all. This is terrible. I'm getting more spatter than I've ever seen at any time I've ever welded. And yes, kids, this is what happens when you weld Flux Core on the wrong polarity. Oops. One thing that I really like about this machine to switch the polarity is something you can easily do from the front of the machine. Just swap the two connectors on my Hobart 175. I actually have to open it up and unbolt the cables that lead to the gun connector and the work clamp and switch them around. This makes it a lot easier. Well, maybe a little bit of undercut. I could have probably gone a little bit slower, but I think all in all, those are decent looking welds, and the machine is performing excellent. I'm enjoying using this. Well, using it in MIG worked out really great, so let's switch it over to stick mode. I've got some 3/32" 7018, and the machine's set at 95 amps, and all other settings are whatever the factory default was. Full disclosure here, I am not a stick welder. I can stick weld, but I've never had any formal training in it as I did with MIG and TIG. So by and large, this is just going to be for fun. I got it bumped up now to 105 amps. It's sticking like crazy. All right, now we're getting a decently stable arc. Seems to be running pretty smooth. I'll try taking this up to 110 amps and see if I get a little better start. Try a larger electrode. I've got a 1/8 inch 7018, and we have the machine bumped up to 130 amps. Well, I'm not going to win any contests or awards for these welds, but, I can stick metal together. It was a little hard sometimes to weld around the camera because I wanted to provide the arc shot, but the point is the machine does great on stick. It does every bit as good as my TIG 225 or even my Lincoln Tombstone does. Well, I do want to try some different wire. I'm going to take out the 030 wire and try some 025. With the feed rollers disengaged and the contact tip on the torch removed, I just need to respool this wire and hope it doesn't turn into a bird's nest. This roll is not going to fit in this machine. Well, I was looking for a way to adapt these small rolls because sometimes I do get a smaller quantity of wire. So I found a source for a file that you can send to your 3D printer that will adapt your larger spindle for these smaller spools of wire. Just need to take off the spool adapter. I can slide this 3D printed part on and then fit the roll. I've provided a link in the description for this file. You can download it yourself and print it. Now I just need to put in the correct feed rollers for the 025 wire. Some of these may be marked as 0.6 millimeter, which is essentially the same size. Well, I put the machine on default settings. I have some coupons here that I got from Weld Metals Online. There's a link in the description for these. And the tacks seem to go good, so let's try running a bead. Yeah, here once again, using the default settings on the chart seem to be right in the sweet spot. The machine sounds great, the weld puddle looks perfect, and the weld profile I think looks really good. I'm pretty happy here. Well, I think I've run it through its initial paces, so I can give you my first thoughts, first impressions. Remember, these are just first impressions. I really haven't had a chance to really use the machine. So hopefully these will be added to in future videos. Well, let's first talk about the good. First, it looks great. I think it's designed well. It fits in with the other products that PrimeWeld is selling. I think it's nice and ergonomic, and it's pretty easy to set up. And I love the fact that it's lightweight. It's got a nice big MIG torch on it. The stinger and the clamp are nice big and heavy duty. It's easy to switch polarity right there on the front of the machine. The default settings that they give you work just perfect. The synergic welding, automatically adjusting the voltage, was excellent to have. And having that fan on demand where it's not running continuously is a nice bonus. Some things that maybe I didn't like as much. The trigger on the torch is super sensitive. I kept having to cut wire because I kept hitting it, and I didn't think I was putting that much pressure on it. The voltage adjustments are limited. The inductance adjustment is pretty limited. I kind of wish it would come with that small spool adapter, especially for those of us in home shops. It'd be kind of nice to have a button on the inside of the case for a wire feed mode, so you don't have to be on the other end of the torch to do that. Maybe even a purge button to purge gas through the liner, so there's gas, fresh gas at the front of the torch right away. I think that'd be kind of nice to have. I also thought it was interesting that there was no setting for C90. We had C25 and 100, but not C90, which I think is used as much as C25 is. And there were plenty of things on the machine that we didn't even talk about. We didn't talk about hot start and arc force in stick mode. I don't have a spool gun, so I couldn't show you that. I don't have a torch that would be compatible with lift TIG that has a separate valve for the argon. I don't have any C100 gas, so it'd be nice to see how well the settings work there, or even to try to use it with dual shield Flux Core. And it looks like this thing might have the ability to do spray arc welding, but again, I didn't have the wire or the right gas to test that out. And even though I might have maybe been a little bit nitpicky or overly critical on some of those things that weren't so great, those are probably more nice to haves than need to haves, especially as a hobby welder. I think the machine is fantastic so far. I do love it. I cannot wait to put it to use on some bigger projects, and I'm going to be looking forward to sharing some of that here on YouTube. The bottom line is, for what this sells for, which is just under $1,000 shipped to a U.S. address, this thing is a phenomenal buy. I can't say enough about the value for the quality that you get out of the PrimeWeld machines that I have. I will be a PrimeWeld customer for a long time to come. Well, I think that's going to wrap up my first impressions then of this machine. I hope you found it informative as much as I found it fun to operate. Thank you again for watching. For those that are subscribers, I thank you. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. You can see this machine in future videos. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.